Every now and again I get an email or a message asking me to talk about warrants and whether or not a wet ink signature is required for such a warrant, the execution thereof. And that's understandable because there's a lot of videos that go around on social media claiming that this warrant is not valid because it doesn't have a wet ink signature and so on and so forth. But as you'll find out throughout this video, many videos that you see on social media are not really true. Apart from mine, of course. I wouldn't put a video out if I didn't know what I was talking about. And even when there's an ambiguity, I'll tell you there might be an ambiguity, and you might have your own thoughts about it, and I'll invite you when those might be relevant. But as the case has it, I've done warrants in a number of videos before in a great deal of detail. I will link one of those in the description below. You can go ahead and watch that one after this one. Don't leave this video first. You can go and watch that after this one because that will go into a lot more detail about various things, what might or might not make a valid warrant. But in brief, the bits that you need to know, I'm going to cover in this video. So what is a warrant? Well, a warrant is permission, a lawful permission for the authorities, be that the police, HMRC, or whomever, to execute a search or an arrest or something else. So it's a permission, and it's a permission obtained with an application to the court, and it's then granted either by a magistrate or a judge, and under various legislation. There's various different pieces of legislation that grants the opportunity to apply for such a warrant. For example, probably one of the most common is Section 8 of PACE, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984, which is the warrant to search for evidence for indictable offences, and this can be an all-premises search or a specific premises search. Most of them, a lot of them, if they are for serious offences, will be an all-premises search, which will pertain to any and all premises that belong to a specific individual. There's quite a number of different criterion that need to be met for that. The most obvious of which is that if they don't get the warrant to sort of burst the door down and go and search for the stuff, then someone's going to dispose of it, make off with it, or otherwise do a runner. So all of those criteria need to be met. You can hear more about those in the video that I link in the description below. But in brief, that can include all buildings, and the court is very wide in its application of what is a building, and it can even include a tent. But it will also include vehicles and everything else as well. There are around 40,000 odd warrants issued each year under various bits of legislation. There's a lot of consultations on reform for warrants, on where they should or should not be used. And of course, much discussion comes up when it comes to TV licensing, because TV licensing legislation has its own provision for the application and execution of a warrant. And there's a peculiar add-on within the legislation, which I'll come back to in a moment. But under Part 4 and Section 366 of the Communications Act 2003 provides that a warrant might be provided if there is sufficient reason to believe that television receiving equipment might be being used on the premises in contravention of the legislation, i.e. the requirement to have a license, and it is limited in scope for the specific testing of television receiving equipment, which I've discussed in many other videos, is anything that is either installed for the purposes of, whether or not there's another purpose, or is being used for receiving or recording live TV or BBC iPlayer. Now, we'll have a discussion about that in many other videos, but that is what the warrant is generally available for when it comes to TV licensing. And just as a momentary interlude, this is an ad. It's an ad for my own app. It's proofify.app. If you ever want to keep the evidence to win a claim that might happen in the future, before it happens is the best way of doing it. So proofify.app in the description below. Join the waiting list. It's an app that will help you store and keep the evidence securely. So if it ever comes up later, you've got it. It will come along with guidance from me as to what evidence we need to help you win the case. Because that's the biggest problem for lawyers, is you don't have the evidence, but you will with Proofify. Back to the video. But in any and all of these different opportunities for a warrant, they do not need to have a wet ink signature. This is simply a bit of a myth that you find in various videos going around on social media. In fact, there is a court in the west of London which is essentially a warrants court. Of course, it does other things as well, but one of its primary tasks is to cast their eye over the information which is essentially the information document that comes with the application for a warrant, to see whether it meets the criteria to grant that warrant. If so, the magistrate or the judge's name goes at the bottom of that warrant, very often, or more often in fact, electronically, and it is just the name of the magistrate or judge at the bottom. And in some cases, it might even just say justices of the peace or justice of the peace if it's a single magistrate. The most important thing is, as long as it has received an official seal, which again can be electronic, doesn't have to be a physical stamp, and is very often not a physical stamp. As long as it has been sealed by the court, it's an official order or warrant issued by the court. And then these electronic warrants can be sent off to various departments. They can print it out, take it with them. It does have to be produced to the owner or whoever is in charge of the property or the vehicle and so on. And produced isn't just a case of holding up a piece of paper, say, here's the warrant. They have to have the opportunity to read it, of course, in a reasonable opportunity, which may in some situations be after the search has been conducted. So what was the specific quirk I said about TV licensing? Now, I've mentioned this in other videos. Some people disagree with it. Some people don't like it. Well, I can well understand if you don't like it, but if you disagree with it, I would just urge you to go back and read the legislation. And if you still don't agree with it, then take formal legal advice, because this video is not. This video is an overview on what the law is. If you disagree with it, that's up to you. But I would suggest you probably don't disagree with it. And if you really strenuously disagree with it and want to rely on that disagreement, that you go and get formal legal advice. But the quirk that I'm talking about is this. If a warrant is issued for the search of a premises under the TV licensing legislation, and they want to come in and search your premises, you are under a statutory duty to provide all such assistance as is reasonably required. Now, the courts are really yet to fully test what this duty to comply and assist as much as reasonably is required. And so I do suspect that there will be limits as to what assistance that can entail. And the courts may well interpret the legislation fairly widely, in that if the officer executing the warrant says to you, please point out any device on the premises that could possibly receive a television signal, that could, in theory, relate to any of your devices, such as your phone, your laptop, and so on and so forth. Because even if you're, let's say, a laptop, you're not using a laptop and never intended to use a laptop to receive live TV. It certainly could do, because if you connect to the internet, you could go to YouTube, you could watch Sky News or whatever other kind of live news channel that is an official TV program company, which is another aside that I don't really agree with. I'm not particularly a fan of as a barrister and as an individual, because I did contact the BBC press office and they could not provide me with a definitive list of what is or is not a TV company for the purposes of the legislation. So for one, I think that's a bit vague, but by the by, that's what it is. That's where we are. So that's the little quirk with the execution of a warrant under TV licensing legislation. I think it's a bit of an odd one, because you are under a duty to assist, but the extent of that duty, I think, is yet to be fully tested by the courts or in court by individuals who disagree with it. For example, I would probably be one to challenge such a thing and even take it for a proper administrative court to decide upon a specific question over how far that duty extends. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. There are reportedly not very many warrants issued for TV licensing. I haven't seen exact statistics, but I trust in part the research by John at Chili John Carney. He's got a very entertaining channel talking pretty much exclusively, apart from the odd few videos, about TV licensing. I will hit him up and link him in the description below for your enjoyment, for your entertainment, and perhaps a bit of research. He says that there are very, very few, as in the very low hundreds of these issued every year, compared to the many tens of thousands of people that are prosecuted under TV licensing legislation. Now, I've done a number of videos about this subject because I think that it's wrong when people will buy a license, as somebody did in the comment section just the other day, because they believed that they need a TV license when in my view they wouldn't, not legal advice, but in my view they wouldn't have done. Had they come to me for formal legal advice, I suspect that I would have said, you don't need a TV license for what you're explaining to me. But because this is not formal legal advice, that was just my thought process at the time. I think it's wrong that people do pay for these licenses when they either don't need it or that they pay for it out of fear of prosecution, because that should never be a reason to pay for something, just simply out of the fear of prosecution. So if you really are unsure and you do want a definitive answer, then you need legal advice, but by which point you might as well pay for the TV license, because the legal advice is very likely to be very much more than the TV license itself, unless of course you get a friendly lawyer who's willing to do it on pro bono for you. And whilst you cannot rely on my videos as formal legal advice, you can certainly think of them as guidance, and they are guidance from someone who has read all of the legislation, and I have multiple degrees and my practicing certificate to help me to understand and interpret that legislation and how it will apply in court. So whilst this cannot be formal legal advice, it certainly is my guidance on the topic. So there's your answer to the question that pops up again and again, thanks to various social media videos claiming that you need a wet ink signature on a warrant. You do not. It does not need a wet ink signature, or any signature for that matter. And just as an aside, for those that are not quite clear about what a wet ink signature is, if I reach underneath the camera, I can find a pen. And literally, if you take a pen, if you take a pen and sign your name, that will be a wet ink signature. It does not need one of these. In fact, it doesn't need to be in pen at all. It can be electronic, it can be printed, and even just emailed and then printed out at the other end by the officers. So for those that weren't aware of that and see those videos flying around on social media, now you have it. But once again, I will link the other video in the description below, going into more detail about warrants and when they may or may not be valid. You might find that interesting. Check that out. I'll try to link it as a card as well, or an end screen or something like that. I don't very often do end screens. By the way, let me know in the comments if you think end screens are useful to you, i.e. showing you which video to go to next. They take time to do, and I'm time poor because I'm always working. So with that, I thank you for watching. Please do smash that like button and subscribe. Share this with somebody that you want to win this argument about whether you really need a wet ink signature or not, because then you can win the argument and blame me for the argument that ensues. So please make sure you subscribe. It helps me reach a wider audience. I'm eternally grateful. And as the final plug for my own app, please do check out proofify.app in the description below. Join the waiting list. It will help you solve your legal problems. I can't promise that you'll win, but I can promise you that it will help you win. Thanks for watching.